Well, the reason we spun the wheel, the reason we're wearing socks on our hands right now, Skol,
The most muted high five we've ever had.
is because our Minnesota Vikings demolished
Kicked the living crap out of the Houston
the
Texans.
Houston Texans. It was such a good game. We both preseason picked that this game would be a loss for the Vikings, and that was the impetus for spinning the wheel. That's why we're wearing socks on our hands. But I will take it because the Vikings are 3-0, man.
3-0. Who'd have thunk? Neither of us thought.
No, I had them at 1-2.
We're pretty public with what our predictions were. We both had them at 1-2, and I couldn't be happier to be wrong. I also couldn't be happier to have a lot of people be wrong about Sam Darnold. He's lighting it up. He is looking great. He is definitely feeding into the narrative that this Vikings team is the best chance he's ever had to be a starter on a good team with good weapons. And the Vikings don't even have all of the best weapons available. You're still missing Addison pretty much the whole season and TJ Hawkinson. And they're still looking great. It's so much fun. I'm having a blast. I guess I don't know what else is there to say.
The other thing I think you need to say is this defense is lights out. Like, so they're so good. How many sacks did they have through 3 games?
So they had 5 against the Texans. I'm pretty sure they had 6 against the Niners, and I think it was even still 5 again against the Giants.
So we're sitting at 16 sacks right now through 3 games.
Yeah, I think I saw a stat, and I don't remember the exact stat, but it's something like the Vikings are the first team in
A long time.
a while to start the season with 5 sacks in each of the first 3 games.
I remember the tweet you're referencing, and I don't remember which teams it was. Maybe like an early 2000s Baltimore Ravens team or something, but it was like, it's been 20 years, 25 years
Yeah.
since the Vikings, or any team for that matter, have been that stout on defense. This defense has been a lot of fun to watch, and it's not one guy, it's everybody.
That's the thing. It's kind of been like a different superstar every week. Who was it the first week? Van Ginkel was kind of the guy that was flashing everywhere against the Giants. Even Ivan Pace too. Against the Niners, it was Blake Cashman. He seemed to be everywhere. And then against the Texans, it was who was it? Jonathan Grenard. He was kind of flashing everywhere. He got 3 sacks himself. Yeah. It's just a different guy. It kind of reminds me of like the peak Bill Belichick Patriots days, where like that was more on offense. They would have like a different random like running back get like 150 yards receiving out of nowhere, and then the next week it was another guy getting like at 200 yards rushing. Like, you just never know what the poison's going to be, and it's really exciting to watch.
So we started this last week at the Podcast Awards. Let's continue our Roses and Thorns segment. So rose being something good, a thorn being something bad. What were your Roses and Thorns this week from the Vikings beating the Texans 34-7?
How about we both do our roses and then both do our thorns? All right.
I'm giving you a thumbs up, but you can't see that.
It's just a mitten we're wearing. My hands are so warm right now.
Yeah, and my forearms are like super itchy.
Yeah, it's exciting. It's definitely a purple punishment.
This is not comfortable.
Anyways, my rose is that every week they're just getting rid of the excuses. The excuse against the Vikings after the Giants game was, the Giants the Vikings beat up on the Giants. The Giants are an awful team. Of course they're going to beat up on that. It'd be weird if they didn't beat up on the Giants. So that's why Stephen A. Smith knocked them down that week. And then the excuse against the Niners was, they don't have Christian McCaffrey's
injured.
And, it's just one game. It's a fluke. They were at home. Of course they were going to look good. It's not like they dominated. That was the excuse that week. But, I mean, 3 in a row now. The Texans are a good team. They're a very good team, and they're still in that point where people are picking them early in the season to be Super Bowl favorites, or at least deep playoff favorites. And what's the excuse? Why did the Vikings suck this week? They didn't, because they demolished 34-7 the Texans, who are a league favorite so far. So my rose is that they're just getting rid of the excuses, and people just have to say, darn it, the Vikings are actually a good team.
Yeah, I think I definitely agree with you 100%. I think the rose for me is that it seems like, I don't want to jinx anything, knock on wood. It seems like the Vikings have been freed from this curse of being.
Oh no! What did you do, Evan? What did you just do?
But you know what I'm saying, right? And I'm not the first one to say it. It's been said on Twitter and wherever else, after the game yesterday and throughout the day today. Like, even I think our friend of the show, Dustin Baker, has tweeted similar things. Like, we just don't know, as Vikings fans, we don't know what to do with a team like this. And I think being the lifelong Vikings fan that I've been, following this team since the mid-'90s when they went to the playoffs 3 years in a row and went to the NFC Championship twice in 3 years, we don't know what to do with this type of success. And it doesn't seem like there's really anything other than injury or other than something catastrophic standing in the way of the Vikings. Like, it's just everything's there for them. And you mentioned it previously, even with some key injuries, I can't even enunciate the number of things I'm trying to say. Even with Jordan Addison out, with TJ Hawkinson out, with Ivan Pace out this last week, they still found a way to win. And it wasn't just one guy on defense. It was all these guys, and it's been a different guy every week, and it's kind of been the same on offense. Justin Jefferson hasn't blown everybody out of the water with his stat lines. He's had really good games, but it's not been oh my gosh, this guy's gonna set the league record for yards or touchdowns or anything. It's pretty germane stats for the most part. He'll pop off a big game at some point. Oh, yeah. We all expect him to do that. And the chemistry that he has with Sam Darnold has been really fun to watch. But I'm getting long-winded. I think my rose is just the fact that it seems like everything's there for the Vikings. Nothing is really standing in the way. Hopefully that stays the same.
Yeah. All right. We have to have some thorns here. I guess my thorn, you mentioned that injuries kind of don't seem like they're going to affect this team, which they've shown they've overcome some decent injuries. But my thorn is the injury scares that we got in this Texans game. For a minute, it just seemed like the breath got taken away from every Vikings fan when there was that bang play where former Viking Danielle Hunter went low on Sam Darnold, and they're really looking at Darnold's knee. Now, I also think the Danielle Hunter play, he's not a dirty player. I think I heard on KFAN this morning that this might have been Danielle Hunter's first roughing the passer penalty, and he's been in the league for almost a decade.
Wow, that's
as
surprising.
A pass rusher.
That's surprising.
Yeah, so whether that's 100% true or not, he's had very few of those. He's not a dirty player, and he immediately, after that play, was like, "No, I didn't mean to." He was kind of shoved into him, and it was just kind of a situational play. It just happened to be low on the quarterback. So no booing Danielle Hunter. He's still a good guy, good former Viking. But that was a thorn to maybe have this awesome, amazing season just get deflated again by a huge quarterback injury. And then a little bit later on, Justin Jefferson, he jammed his pinky or something. And after that, of course, he had one pretty awful drop and then one what would have been an amazing catch that he got his hands on that he didn't ultimately catch it. So it's oh man, is that pinky bothering him? What's going on? But ultimately, I think those injuries, they came out today and said Darnold's good. There's no structural damage to his knee, just a bruise. And Jefferson, he came back in and played and taped up his finger, and he was fine. So ultimately, it's okay, but that's my thorn. What about you?
Well, before we get to my thorn, another injury that I think is pretty important, but is probably under the radar, is Brian O'Neill. He left the game, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think he came back.
I don't know if he did or not.
David Questenberry took over for him at
right tackle.
Right tackle. I was trying to think of the quarter too.
What quarter? I think it was in the third, maybe
late third or early fourth. I can't remember. But anyways, Brian O'Neill went out too, and I haven't seen or heard an update on him yet today. So that'll be an interesting one to follow, and could be even more of a thorn than a minor something or other to Darnold or Jefferson.
Mm-hmm. The one thing about that is Questenberry last season, he made a couple of starts for Brian O'Neill. As consistent and great O'Neill is, he has had, every season he seems to miss one or two, or there was that one year where he missed quite a few games, but he's not a guaranteed 17-game starter, and that's okay, especially when Questenberry, who's getting up there, he can step in and at least play as well as you need him to. It's not like, oh no, we might as well not have a right tackle out there. So, injuries, we say they're not going to be scary, but they really could be, and it's just lucky that the Vikings have a well-built roster with some quality depth.
Yes, there's a ton of depth, and that's exciting. My thorn would be the kind of the antithesis to the fast start. Vikings scored 14 points right away, boom, boom in the first quarter, and then the second quarter was really hard to watch. There were a ton of penalties. Sam Darnold started to be pressured a lot by the Texans defensive line, started to make some of those kind of silly, like, oh, don't do that type of thing, and fortunately none of that cost the Vikings anything, and the defense was playing so well, the Vikings defense that is, was playing so well that it really didn't matter because the Texans weren't going to put up points anyways. But that was still frustrating to see. Like, you got to think that this Vikings team is built to the point where they can dominate wall to wall, beginning to end, wire to wire, and not have those like really awkward drives where it's penalty ridden, mistake ridden. Even in the fourth quarter, you have those JJ drops. You have Darnold still kind of, making some of those dumb plays where he's trying to force something and he could just chuck it out of bounds or whatever. I don't remember when this one happened, but there was the one little, like, he snapped it and knew the play was busted and he threw it down in front of him, and he was fortunate that he didn't get a grounding call. I think Jalen Naylor was running a route away from the ball, but he was close enough that they didn't call it for grounding. But anyways, it's those types of things that it's like, man, if we're going to go the distance, if we're going to take this thing to, the divisional round and the NFC Championship game, we gotta fix those things. Those things have to be, they got to be better. We've got to improve those things. KOC, Brian Flores, they've got to work with those guys on how to handle those types of situations. The offensive line has to be more disciplined because I think there were a few false starts in there. Granted, the Texans had like 4 in a row.
They literally had 4 penalties in a row at one point. They were at like 3rd and 4 in field goal range, and then after 4 not even snaps, they were at like 3rd and 19 with like definitely not in field goal range anymore. That was the US Bank Stadium effect.
Yep. So that's my thorn, though, is just the fast start, and then all of a sudden everything just kind of hits a roadblock. And if our defense keeps playing well, that's awesome.
Oh yeah.
But we may not experience that all the time, and the offense has to be sharp, and the offense has to be ready to put up points whenever, not just 14 points in the first quarter and then another 10 points in the third quarter or whatever.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, you mentioned the crap dumb penalties and dumb plays by Bradford. That one where he like backward lateraled it halfway across the field to Powell, and it was just nowhere near him. And Powell had the heads up to like pick it up,
scooped it up,
and he still ended up rushing for like a gain of like 7 yards. That play any other year for the Vikings is like a scoop and score for the defense against the Vikings.
That's one of those things though where it's like stuff like that just doesn't happen to the Vikings, and it happened in all the right ways for the Vikings in that game, which made this game fun to watch. It's made all 3 of these first games really fun to watch.
Yeah, if it means we have to wear socks on our hands every week, I'm here for it. Let's go. I'm sweating.
I'm itchy. I'm sweating. This is better than eating a jalapeno for me, though.
I would have been fine with a jalapeno. This is better than doing push-ups every 5 seconds.
An honorable mention for a Rose, I think, and I don't know, there are probably several others, but the doink in.
Yeah.
You know, talking about things that just like the Vikings just don't experience these kind of like lucky things. Like Will Reichard with a 58-yard field goal, and it doinks off the right upright and it goes in. Like I don't think I've ever seen a field goal that doinks off the upright and goes in.
Yeah, it tells you, it kind of reminds me of the Mighty Ducks, where the coach was like, yeah, when I was a kid, I missed the game-winning goal because it hit the post for the hockey goal or whatever. And one of the kids was like, yeah, but if you were... And he's like, yeah, if I was 1 inch, to the left, it would have gone in. The kid was like, yeah, but if you were 1 inch to the right, it would have been way off. And Will Reichard, he was just enough 1 inch to the left to make that 58-yarder go in.
That was crazy. But good for him. He's got a 58-yarder on his record, and he's perfect.
Yep. And the distance that specific kicked, he boomed it.
Yeah.
That would have been good from like 68 yards. Yeah, like, I don't know. It would have been good for a while.
It would have been amazing. All right. Well, a lot of really good things and a few not so great things, injuries, just, cleaning up penalties and playing better.
Mm-hmm.
Who would you give game balls to?
All right. So I kind of pre-wrote out my game ball. So I think we're going to do offense, defense, and special teams game balls. Offense, I said it last week, until he throws a bunch of picks and loses a game for the Vikings, as long as Sam Darnold keeps playing and looking the way he has been, doesn't even need to throw for 303 every week. Sam Darnold will get my offensive game ball every week as long as he just looks the way he has. So this week, no different. Sam Darnold, he's my offensive game ball.
Nice. Offense for me. Is that how we're doing this?
Sure.
Offense,
yeah, why
offense,
not?
defense. Offense for me, I'm going to go with Jalen Naylor.
Okay.
I feel like Jalen Naylor is the beneficiary of teams giving so much attention to Justin Jefferson, and he is shining in that role, and he is shining in the absence of Jordan Addison.
Yep.
He's definitely stepped into that wide receiver 2 role, and he's played it very well.
Mm-hmm.
And it'll be tough to give that up to Jordan Addison. I think you could make the case that maybe he deserves to stay in, and maybe Jordan Addison's the 3 or the 4 for a while. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know how far he falls down the depth chart and how his injuries to both ankles affect his return.
Mm-hmm.
But man, Jalen Naylor has looked really good, and when called upon, he's there and he's open and he makes the catches, and he's got at least 2 touchdowns.
3. He scored a touchdown in every game so far.
Yeah, Jalen Naylor, offensive game ball for me.
Yeah, I like it. And to all that point, I think it just takes the pressure off of making sure Addison comes back as fast as possible. You kind of get a little bit of time to be like, hey, not that we don't need Jordan Addison, but we don't desperately need him to get on to try and win a game. Yeah. Jalen Naylor is stepping in and doing well.
There's no urgency for him or TJ Hawkinson really to come back. Like the offense is managed pretty well without him. When we get them back, it's just going to be gravy. It's going to be cherry on top. It's going to be awesome.
Hopefully it doesn't like muddle the mojo of what's going on. But yeah, I can't imagine it would. I think it can only be good.
I think KOC is a phenomenal game caller, and when he gets those weapons back in his arsenal, he'll know exactly how to use them. Mm-hmm. He'll figure it out. He'll make it happen. All right, defensive game ball.
My defensive game ball is not a starter. I'm going to say his name wrong. You can help me and correct me because I think you've got it down. Camus Grugier Hill.
I think it's Grugier.
Grugier?
Yeah.
Camus. We'll go with Camus. Because I'm pretty sure I'm saying that right. He stepped in and started in place of Ivan Pace. First play of the game, yes, it was tipped at the line, but he intercepted a CJ Stroud pass, which nobody since like last November can say they intercepted a CJ Stroud pass until, who was it later in the day, Cam Bynum also intercepted a pass from CJ Stroud. Camus stepped in. I don't think he was wearing the green dot. I think it was Blake Cashman. But in a spot where, maybe you're not as overly prepared to be one of the starting inside linebackers, stepped in and immediately made a difference. So, and I think he was flying around all game. He definitely knew what he was supposed to be doing. So yeah, he's my defensive game ball.
I'm giving mine to Jonathan Grenard.
All right.
It's hard to argue with 3 sacks.
Against his former team.
Yeah.
Guys and coaches that should know all about this guy and how to defend against him. Yeah.
He got the honor of being interviewed by Ben Lieber after the game. I think if you're selected for that interview, that's kind of a high praise. Former Viking Ben Lieber on the field. And the audio's piped out to the whole stadium for whoever's left. So anyways, 3 sacks. He played a great game. Obviously, he was probably playing with a little bit of a passionate chip on his shoulder to, kind of prove it to his old team. But fun to watch and definitely deserving of a game ball.
Yeah, for sure. And not that it really matters. And I just spent a few minutes earlier in this episode praising former Viking Daniil Hunter, but Jonathan Grenard definitely performed better than Hunter did, which when you get beat 34-7, how many guys can you praise on your team? So, it is nice that our new guy beat out the old guy who is more expensive, and that's a whole nother topic for a whole nother episode. But yeah, I like that.
All right, last one, special teams.
All right, this one is mostly based on one play. Brandon Powell is my special teams game ball. Could easily say Will Reichard. Could easily say I think this is the best game in a while for punter Ryan Wright. His average in that game was like twice as long as his average all last season. Ryan Wright had a good game, but Brandon Powell on one punt return. It was a ball that was obviously the Vikings were receiving. This ball was obviously going to go into the end zone. The Vikings would have had a touchback, but there was at least 1 or 2 Texan defenders that were coming up to potentially down the ball deep inside the 5 and pin the Vikings back. Powell kind of read it, knew what was going on, saw the gunners coming down the field, tried to sell that he was going to catch it a little bit beforehand, but at the last minute he blocked the gunner to make sure that the Texan gunner couldn't catch the ball and down it deep inside the 5. So that's a heads up play. That's a play that shows you he's well coached and knows the situation. Even for a guy that he's a wide receiver and he's not wide receiver 1, 2, 3, or 4. But he knows how to play ball, and he made a difference. That was a difference-making play in the game.
I'm pretty sure we were texting at that moment. We'd text through the whole game.
If we're not together.
But we were texting, and you said something about how, man, Brandon Powell just saved us getting the ball at the 1 yard line or something. And I said, yeah, maybe, but he may have also just prevented a opportunity for a 97-yard bomb down the field. So, there's give and take there. But definitely agree with you. That was a heads-up play by Brandon Powell. And it's one of the reasons why I think he's still on this roster. He's very aware of what's going on, and you need guys like that. And I think he's earned his roster spot because of that.
Absolutely.
I'm taking the easy route. I'm going with Will the Thrill.
He earned it.
Will Reichard. He remains perfect on the season, knock on wood. And yeah, I think I saw a tweet today. It might have been Dustin Baker, but the Vikings, obviously watched a lot of players walk out, including Greg Joseph. And it was kind of a comparison of who left and who is now a Viking. Kirk Cousins was on that list, and you gotta think that Kwesi Adofo-Mensah has earned his keep with the roster he's built, and maybe earned himself a few more years to stick around as the Vikings general manager, because it's players like Will Reichard that you acquire in the draft that can be a difference maker in your program. Yeah. And man, it was fun to watch. He's been fun to watch all season. He's hit every kick he's kicked. He's looked decent on kickoffs, I thought. I think we're still all adjusting to the new kickoff rule. He did get a little bit of a false start, so to speak. On the kickoff. He had to re-kick the kickoff because they weren't ready. I think there might have been the refs were listening in their earpiece for if TV's ready, and I don't think TV was ready, and so he kicked it anyways, and they're blow the whistle and plays dead. You got to kick it again.
Yeah,
he did the same thing.
I've never seen that before.
That was weird. The opening kickoff of the second half happened the same way.
Oh, really?
It wasn't the kicker like prematurely kicked, but I forget what happened. But that kickoff had to be re-kicked as well. I think it was the first game I've ever watched where both halves started with a weird re-kick situation. It was kind of odd.
You texted me that.
But anyways.
Will record, great. He was perfect. He has not, like you said, we've both said it many times, through 3 games of his NFL career, he's been perfect. And honestly, outside of one blocked field goal attempt in preseason, he's been perfect throughout preseason as well. I guess I don't know how he's been in practice. Obviously good, otherwise they wouldn't have kept him on the roster. But yeah, and I know he was the first kicker taken in the draft. He was like a 5th round pick, which is pretty high for kickers. But I mean, if he's the guy, if you can solidify your kicker position comfortably for who knows how long. Kickers can play for 20 years if they really want to. Then a 5th round pick is well worth the price, especially since sometimes you take a linebacker in the 5th round. Are they even going to make the team? You know, like you got a kicker. Kicker is an important position, and as Vikings fans, we know how bad that kicking position can screw over games.
Yes. I just found a very practical purpose for socks on the hands while pouring a beer. It picks up any of the dribble. It just soaks it up, kind of like a towel. It's nice.
I have a little bit of a mustache and beard going, and I did notice that I'm like wearing napkins, although I made a critical error. These are not the fuzziest socks in the world, but there's some fuzz to them. And for the last like 15 minutes, I've been fighting. There's like a hair in my mouth, and I can't get it.
No.
It's one of those. If I tried, I'm just gonna put 30 more hairs in my mouth from this.
I'll give you permission to take them off.
No,
if you need to.
No. This is a part of the purple punishments, and I'm hoping maybe I can wash the hair down or something. I don't know, and maybe it's one of my mustache hairs that like won't leave
you need
my
to
face.
Crack that final beer of yours open and get that going for sure.
Yeah. This has been a fun purple punishment so far.
It was a fun game as well. It was fun to watch the Vikings just absolutely beat up on what is a pretty good football team. And I think that can't be understated, the fact that the Vikings have now beaten the 49ers and the Texans.
Back-to-back weeks.
I
think the only excuse people who are still Vikings naysayers might say is, yeah, well, that was at home both weeks. Which, fair, it is. There is such a thing as home field advantage, and we saw it, and we talked about it earlier with the multiple penalties back-to-back for the Texans, pretty much solely because the stadium was just going insane.
I wish we could have been there. It would have been awesome.
Oh, man. That would have been crazy. I don't think we would have gained our hearing back for a while. But it will be nice to see in the next game, because they're going to Green Bay against a Packers team that somehow has been undefeated since Jordan Love has been out. But yeah, that'll be fun. At least they're playing in Green Bay in the fall and not the winter.
Yes. Agreed. It looks to be pretty nice. So we can transition here while you carefully pour your beer with socks on your hands.
Yep.
Again, a quick reminder, just in case you kind of skipped through and you didn't watch the beginning. We're wearing socks on our hands. We don't do this all the time. This is not normal. In fact, we probably will never do this again because
hopefully
this hasn't been very enjoyable. But we made preseason picks. We both picked the Vikings to lose to the Texans. The Vikings, in fact, did not lose to the Texans. They beat up on the Texans. And so we spun the wheel of purple punishments, and here we are with socks on our hands. That was the punishment for the day.
Yep. Last week it was push-ups. 10 push-ups every time we said the word Vikings.
Yes.
Which was fun as well.
So this is, to me, again, still slightly better than doing 10 push-ups every time you say Vikings.
I agree.
I was sore. Like, my chest was super sore for, like, the whole week.
And I was sick, too. Like, if you listen to that episode 58, you might be able to hear it in my voice, like, oh, yeah, I was dealing with something. After the podcast awards, like, I fought. Like, last week kind of sucked. I was sick. And being a guy that doesn't do push-ups every day, having that little bit of soreness in your upper body, that just made it so much worse.
I just like to think we got a little bit stronger there.
Well, yeah, the Vikings are just they're giving us opportunities to be bigger, faster, stronger.